right, we are live here tonight for episode 2 of The Intersection. The Intersection is a way that we get to engage in topics that are front and center to culture, and also kind of sit at that intersection where we really need our faith to inform us of how to deal with, how to approach, how to think through, how to talk about issues that are, really going on in culture, affecting both Christians and non-Christians and everybody in between, no matter where you are in the spectrum. So you are in for a treat tonight. This is episode 2 of The Intersection, and we are talking about the problem of mental health, the problem of mental health. Joining us tonight is my brother, Jason Wire. He is going to be participating in the conversation tonight as the resident expert. He's not, he's just a dialogue partner along with myself. But also tonight we have, with the awesome background in her video, it's amazing. We have Dr. Ekpe Wade. She is actually our expert of the evening. Dr. Wade is a MD doctor, a medical doctor, as well as an LPC. She's a counselor as well. So she has the medical side, she has the counseling side, and so she's going to help us in our conversation tonight. So without further ado, let's just kind of jump in. The month of May was if I'm saying this wrong, correct me, Mental Health Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, so Mental Health Awareness Month. Jason, did you know this?
That's been going on since like the 1960s also. Like, that's not just like a new thing. Like, that's been going on for a while, but new to me.
Wow. New to me too. I didn't know it was Mental Health Month until, Jason, you pointed that out to me in May, but we're just past May. But I think in light of the fact that we just got out of Mental Health Month, that in light of COVID and all these other things that are providing mental health challenges, that we take some time to really kind of talk about this. So when we say that the title of this episode is The Problem with Mental Health. So the issue is not mental health itself. The issue is not people who are the people, or all of us, we all struggle with mental health from time to time. We're not the problem. The problem really is the mishandling of mental health issues, and all of us, when we are dealing with mental health stuff. Just recently in the news, if you pay attention to sports, there's a world-class tennis player named, I don't want to mess up her name. Somebody help me.
You said it right before. Naomi
Osaka.
Mm-hmm.
Osaka. She recently withdrew from
the French Open.
The French Open, that's right. Because they were wanting her to do press conferences as part of her contract, which is totally legit. But she said basically she was having anxiety. It was throwing her off. And she withdrew from the tournament to tend to her mental health, right? I don't know that I recall an athlete of her stature on a stage that big pulling out of competition to tend to their mental health. Just something that's kind of new territory, at least for me. Then we also, if you were paying attention to the royal family a few months ago, Meghan Markle, I don't know what her official title is. I don't follow the royals. She is the Duchess of Sussex or York, something. I don't know. Is that right?
Nice.
Oh, I'm right. See?
Yeah.
Oh, so she's the Duchess of something. I was reading in an article that her husband, Prince Harry, said that, I think it was the day before or the week before they got married, she said to him that she was having suicidal thoughts. And he did not know what to do with that. All he knew what to do was like, hey, we're about to get married, smile and wave. And he said he felt bad because he didn't know how to help his wife at such a dark moment when the world is watching. It's like, you just have to perform. We don't have time to be saddled down, bogged down with mental health problems. And then the other problem is we just don't know what to do by and large. So our society as a whole we just usually mishandle mental health issues and people who are struggling with mental health. Jason, help me out. Talk a little bit about what do you think society does wrong when it comes to the handling of these issues?
Yeah, I think there's just not knowing what to do. I read a funny thing the other day. It's on some kind of social media platform. I read to my wife and we cracked up because of how true it says. It says, my kid said being a grown-up must be awesome because you can eat junk food and no one makes you go get up in the morning. You don't have to take showers if you don't want to. And I didn't want to ruin it for my kids by telling them that they're explaining depression. So, and like, even like that's just not a kid's intake. Like if you hear like, oh man, I get to, sleep in, I'll, eat whatever I want, how can that go from like living the dream life to like, that's actually depression. Like that's how messed up we are with understanding like what mental health means to us and how it's impactful and everything. And some of the ways I also think it's like a little misconstrued. So I'm a firefighter for the city of Houston, and so there's a couple things that there's the calls that we go on. I go on as a paramedic a lot, and also on the fire engine. But there's a couple of calls that will go on with police. One of those calls is overdoses. So when somebody overdoses for whatever reason, like that's not on my level, but the police come with us on those calls. So when we get there, if the overdose is something that that like a suicidal issue, then like we don't leave those people alone. We take them to the hospital to get care. But sometimes there's a psychiatric problem that's a little bit different than an overdose, and it comes in differently. So we'll go on psychiatrics and overdose. So if this person is not having suicidal thoughts, but they've been treated by the county, I'm not allowed to take them to the county. I have to take them to the ER. Mm-hmm. So if they're suffering from depression or they're suffering from anxiety and they got to go to the county, they actually have the option to go with the police to the county, which is great because they get to bypass the ER. But what that looks like is this person who's suffering from a mental health disorder gets put in the back of the cop car in front of their home or wherever it is, and then they go to this mental health facility, so, and a lot of times like police will want to put handcuffs on them in the back because they don't know who this person is. That's kind of their trained safety orientation. So, okay, like you've been treated with mental health, that's great. So let's just put your hands behind your back. We'll take you over to this facility. But I mean, can you imagine like this person, like most people like, I don't know. Can you imagine doing that? Like, I can't imagine being put in the back of a cop car when I'm having a mental health issue, and then I'm getting taken to get help. That seems so backwards. And then, like the onlookers that are there, like, oh man, they're getting. I guess they're having problems. Getting taken off in a cop car. So. There's a whole plethora, of issues. That's kind of like a kind of a big deal, I think, of just like how we can criminalize mental health. There's a small line between that because even on the overdoses, like it goes from like, this person was suffering from like suicidal tendencies or just like a severe mental health crisis to, whoa, this person has illegal drugs here. So now this is a police matter, and what's more important at this moment, the mental health or this being a police matter. So and that can be a tricky line to draw, unfortunately, because safety is important for those people responding to possibly dangerous situations, and those situations definitely have been dangerous for us in the past. So we've been thankful to have police there at certain times, but other times it's like why is this here? Yeah. Really so kind of confusing, and we're the experts, we're the professionals.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's true. I mean, it's a gray area, in your line of work to say, what's the focus to try to get this person some help or to keep people safe, right? And that's, unfortunately, it's probably not a black or white situation in the field. It's probably one that we're probably not equipped well for in many cases. And so we know that these kinds of things happen in society, but where as a pastor, what I want to kind of talk about briefly is how the church, at least from my experience, handles mental health situations. Now, I grew up in church and I don't remember there being much, if any, talk about mental health situations. I do remember there was a lady who was in leadership, who I believe was a counselor, but outside of that, I didn't know like depression, anxiety, bipolar. I mean, I think these were just kind of things you may see on TV, but not stuff that was like real in our life. It wasn't something the church would talk about. Not saying it was the church is wrong because they didn't talk about it. I never heard it. Maybe they did, maybe I just missed it. But I think one thing I hear in churches that breaks my heart is that I've heard Christians say, and this is mostly on social media, that like if there's no such thing as like if you're a Christian, you can't be depressed, or you can't, if you are dealing with like bipolar disorder, it means that you're demon possessed, and so instead of getting you treatment, we're going to try to cast the demon out of it. Right. Or I hear a lot of this theology that says, if you just take your thoughts captive, then that will help you overcome your depression, or that'll help you overcome your anxiety. Now, I do believe that the scriptures are true, but at the same time, what I've heard the church kind of do is offer these as holistic solutions when there's probably more to it than just, okay, there's, speak life over yourself and take your thoughts captive and don't think bad thought. I mean, don't think evil, whatever people may say. And what a person who is struggling may do is retreat because they're like, wait a minute, I tried that. They just retreat because the church doesn't seem to be a place where they can really be honest and open about what they're talking about. The other thing is suicide. I think that suicide is an issue theologically that has kind of plagued the church, because when I was growing up, I don't think this was taught, but I think I just kind of picked this up somehow, that suicide is the unpardonable sin. Mm-hmm. And if you commit suicide, then there's no chance of you going to heaven. Where do we get that from, Jace? Is that a Catholic church kind of teaching?
Yeah.
Or where'd you get
that?
I
don't know, but that's the absolute truth. Like, I don't know if that's just, but I don't know if I watched too many scary movies or whatever, but I've got some unfounded truth, for sure that's absolutely circulating out there. Unpardonable sin, like that's, man, that brings a bunch of questions, right? For like family members or whoever, friends, like, then what is the consequence of that for real?
Exactly. And, I don't want to get into a discussion on salvation. That's for another time, but I think these are misconceptions that the church has to confront in order for us to love well and be a place where healing can actually take place for those of us who are dealing with our own mental health challenges. All right, so let's move on. So we know that we don't handle these situations very well. And I'll be honest, even with some level of training as a pastor, I don't feel super comfortable in this area, trying to help people in these areas. I'm not super comfortable myself. But let's define, when we talk about mental health, let's define what we're talking about here. And when we talked before, for you guys, Jason and Dr. Wade and I were talking, we talked about this continuum of mental health. So on one end of the continuum, we have our everyday mental health concerns. So that's what all of us will some point go through. We have mental health concerns. Then at the other end of the mental health spectrum, there is mental illness that, is diagnosed, may need medication to be treated. And then we find ourselves all along this particular continuum. Dr. Wade, can you help us explain what's going on in this continuum, and just kind of help us define some things here around mental health?
Sure. Just like our physical health that encompasses a lot of different organs, states of being, our mental health encompasses a lot. So it's our emotional, our social, our psychological well-being. And our mental health affects, I think, how we behave how we feel. And it's kind of this cycle, how we feel affects how we behave affects our thoughts, it just keeps going and going. And it also affects how we see ourselves and how we see the world and how we relate to others. And it affects the choices we make. So it is on this continuum that we can slide up and down. As somebody that's been diagnosed with a mental health disorder or not, we can slide up and down based on life circumstances, whether it's trauma or grief, or 2020 with a pandemic. A lot of people that had never had issues with anxiety or anything like that before found themselves really anxious or worrying. So mental health is all of that.
Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about mental health concerns, just kind of the day-to-day stuff. Because Ekpe, you said it, that we all deal with some day-to-day stuff.
Right.
What Jason, we were talking before about just some ways that this may play out. What are some examples of maybe some day-to-day circumstances that we may find ourselves in where there's really a mental health situation going on in us?
Oh yeah, totally. Like it's the situation where like, hey, I'm fine. Like, I feel fine. But I tell you what, my kids are driving me nuts. If I could just get my kids under control, then my life would be great. I mean, I'm fine. I am fine. I feel great. But they're the ones with the problems because I am so frustrated with this. But whenever like I unpack that with friends, like that is a specific issue. But like whenever I unpack this with friends, it's not really like my kids are the issue. It's that like I have a lot of anxiety about maybe like this, maybe something that's coming up, maybe something at work that is just stuck in my mind that I can't get out. That when my kids come up and talk to me, I'm already at a level that I can't handle, and then they come and they just push me over the edge. And so I see that as my kids being the issue. Mm-hmm. But what the actual issue is something that I'm not even paying attention to. And I think that's also what's kind of tough, because if somebody would ask me, oh yeah, no, I'm feeling fine, like a little bit stressed, no big deal, but I'm not seeing how it affects other things. I think that plays off like at work too. I mean, that's just one scenario. Like I'm just taking any work. If work could just get better, if the coworkers that I have there, man, they're just really frustrating. But what's really the issue is like maybe a marital issue, you've gone through all this conflict at home and you're coming into work already preloaded with all these thoughts and anxieties and stuff. And so then any little drop of anxiety that comes from work, and all of a sudden, like it's a work issue, but how do you, that's such a hard problem to self-diagnose. Like I'm not sure like how, so that's what it can look like so we wouldn't even list that as a mental health issue. We would list that as something different, a kid problem, work problem.
Right. And I think it's important that we know, are aware enough that there's something else, maybe there's something else below the surface that's going on. Because if we don't figure that out and name it, then we're upset with the kids and we're punishing them, or we job hop, go from job to job, thinking it's our boss, and there's really something wrong with our own, mental health, right? So there's day-to-day stuff, right? I think Ekpe even said like with grief or loss or change in circumstances, it's graduation season. A lot of parents probably find themselves as empty nesters now. So now that's a huge transition. Kids are leaving home. We may find ourselves just dealing with just kind of this day-to-day, just mental health challenges, right? So that's at one end. Now let's talk about the other end, Ekpe, where we have mental health illness, like we have diagnosable anxiety or depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. So if you could talk about each one of those a little bit. What are we looking for? What are some of the symptoms of those things, and how do we know when to get help?
Yeah, good question. So I'll start with anxiety. Anxiety is defined as having excessive or unrealistic fear or worry. What I usually ask clients that come in is, are you a worrier? Like, do you just kind of worry about everything? That would be generalized anxiety, where past, present, and future, like their worry is not in one specific area. It goes across the board to the kids, financial, environment, all over. And anxiety can actually present in a lot of physiological ways. So back pain, headaches, nausea, upset stomach, irritability, difficulty sleeping, restlessness, all of those things. So if you're finding yourself just working a lot, and with a lot of these physiological symptoms, you might have um, excessive anxiety, excessive worry. Depression is another one. People usually think of depression and anxiety as opposites, but they're really not. A lot of the times they co-occur. Depression is an excessive sadness or depressed mood. And things that you might find with that is decreased interest, things, hobbies that you're interested in, usually you find yourself not interested in them anymore. Things that you used to enjoy are not enjoyable anymore. You might also notice changes in appetite, either up or down, sleep, either up or down, either sleeping too much or not being able to sleep, a loss of energy, also just feelings of like worthlessness or guilt, and thoughts of suicide, thoughts of hurting yourself can be one of the symptoms of depression. Um, and then, so those are the two main ones. Bipolar disorder, previously used to be called manic depression. So you can think of these two spectrums, but where mania is up here, manic is up here, and depression is down here. So depression, I just described, loss of pleasure, things aren't enjoyable, sad mood. And manic is more, you could be more irritable, take more risk, do dangerous things. Like you just have this elated mood, where you're spending a lot of money, or you're hypersexual, or you feel invincible. You're doing things kind of out of character. And so people with bipolar disorder tend to cycle between these two extremes of manic and depression. And then schizophrenia is really like a break from reality. So you can have hallucinations where you might be hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, are the most common symptoms. You can have delusions, where you think people are out to get you, like paranoid delusions. Think that, you know, people, the FBI, the government are implanting things in your brain, or you're able to communicate with other people without speaking. So with schizophrenia, there's more, you see more of a break from reality, along with other symptoms with schizophrenia.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So,
Mhm.
so help me understand. So, especially with anxiety and depression, as a pastor, I hear this kind of a lot. Let's say someone is trying to think of a general example. Someone someone's child is acting out. They've been acting out for a while, and um, this person may say, "I have anxiety,"
Yeah.
right? And so, I was always taught anxiety is a fear-based emotion. So
Mm.
I would say, okay, well, maybe the fear is, one day the child is going to end up in jail, or you have
Mhm.
this fear that they're going to end up hurting somebody or end up dead,
Right.
or so there's this fear that they're not going to, right? But is that, but where I struggle is to know, okay, if you are anxious or struggling with anxiety, when do you need to get help?
Right.
And when is it, hey, let me encourage you, let me pray with you, let's talk through it, let's process it, because once we kind of just put it out there, that may help. How do we know, even with depression, I hear that a lot, like I'm depressed,
Right.
but I don't know when you need to get help.
Right. Right. So um, I think even when people come to you as a pastor and they're saying these things, they are seeking help. and you are able to help. Help can come in so many different forms and facets, whether it's just being, one of the things is just being open and honest with where we are. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm having anxiety over this issue, that is a first step to overcoming that anxiety over that issue. Now, as far as seeking like professional help or something outside of friends, family, church, pastor, if the anxiety, depression, if the symptoms are affecting your daily life, it's time to seek professional help. So some of the symptoms that I described before, if it's affecting your sleep, if it's affecting your eating habits, if it's affecting how you maneuver your day, your job, how you parent your kids, what kind of spouse you are, things like that, then it's time for you most likely to seek professional help. I think more often than not, we wait too long to seek professional or to seek any kind of help. If you're thinking that these things, if you're hearing these symptoms and they characterize you in a way, it's time to talk to somebody about it.
That's good. And so I think what we're saying is it is okay to get help. And not only is it okay,
Yeah.
it is recommended
Yes.
that you get help. Talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Even if somebody, family member, friend, church member, pastor, counselor, just get it out there.
Right.
And so I think what we have to do is do a better job as a society, as a church, is trying to erase the stigma
Yes.
that goes with mental health challenges.
Yeah.
We just kind of put people in a box. We have derogatory words that we use. In the Black community, it's like, man, it was most people don't want to even. I think we're just now open to the idea of therapy or a counselor.
Yeah.
For a while, it's like, what? You can't handle your stuff? You got to go get help? What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? And now it's kind of in vogue, right? Now it's kind of, for bougie people, it's like, I got a therapist. I got a counselor, right? So now I think it's more open, but I think we need to make it more or even less stigmatized.
Yeah. And
right?
I think, especially in the Black church, when you think about who we are, where we've come from, just take slavery, for example. We were in a time where there was so much trauma. There was so much that they saw and felt and experienced that they could not do anything about and could not say anything about it. The way that most of the African American community have dealt with their mental health issues is by not dealing with it, because there was no one to help. There's nothing you can do, right? We have graduated from that time. There is something that we can do. All of that trauma we still carry. All that trauma we've inherited. But now there is something that we can do. We can talk about it. We can get help. We can be open about it. So I think part of that stigma was because in order to survive, they just could not talk about it, or else it would break down and, go crazy. But instead, they stuffed it and they survived. But we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was going to say, there's also some, there's seasons that we go through where like anxiety and depression and other mental health issues are going to be a lot bigger than normal, like that we're going through, right? So like seeking help isn't necessarily like all right, like this is my banner now. I'm a person who has these issues. Like there's times in our life. Do you see that pretty often, like as a seasonal and like, I mean, it's both, right? It doesn't. Can you speak?
I think one perfect example is premarital counseling. That there's no stigma around that. People are praised, and churches, some pastors won't marry couples if they don't go through premarital counseling. That there should be pre-baby counseling. What are we going to do with this new being that's in our house, or the death of a parent, or a special needs child. There's all these circumstances that are thrown our way that we might not know how to deal with, or we might have certain feelings about, that we should talk to. So you're absolutely right, Jason. Yeah, there is. Just because you go to counseling doesn't mean it has to be lifelong or doesn't put you in this box. We can go to counseling as a one-time thing for a one-time event, or for chronic issues, and then everything in between.
So, actually, you were talking, good point. I thought about two things. When you talked about pre-baby counseling, postpartum depression is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think like people know it exists, but like, what do we do? So if you know someone that's having a baby, especially for the first time, like, it may make sense to have a support system, not there to just watch the baby and change diapers and take pictures and goo goo gaga, but to offer a listening ear, some encouragement or whatever to get through that particular season. And then also Sunday, there's a couple that came to church, they have a new baby. If they're watching, I'm not going to name their names, but the guy said, we don't talk enough about their first time parents. We don't talk enough about how a new baby impacts every relationship in your life.
Yes.
And they're like, we need to talk about this more. And what he's saying, I'm just not equipped to, kind of, there's probably some emotion there or some feelings there that are like, okay, wait a minute. Is anybody else going through this, or is this just me?
Right.
So anyway, I think you're right. There's Jason. I think there is seasonal stuff. That, of course, you said it. You're the expert, so we believe it.
Yeah, and also the thing with seasonal is like sometimes you don't even realize it until you've gone through it.
Yeah.
Like you look like babies was one, and like postpartum and stuff. Like there was a time whenever I don't know what it was, but then all of a sudden it's like, man, this is a lot better now than it was, but it's, it's just something that passed, and then you kind of realize like, it didn't have to be that way, like we could have, I don't know. It's just hard to see it when you're in the middle of it, for sure.
Yeah. My mom died 7 years ago in April. And it's crazy how, like, as the years have gone by, it's gotten better. The grief has gotten better and better. But every year around April, like I just get in this funky mood and I don't realize it until I'm like, oh, okay, yes, this is why. And so you're right, Jason, like sometimes it's seasonal, things creep up on you. You don't realize how different things affect you, but we're humans. We're affected in so many different ways.
That's good. So let's talk a little about COVID, right? So COVID was a traumatic thing, is still in some cases, just came out of nowhere, shut everything down, forced people to kind of hang out with their family members, kind of forced people away from the things that usually bring us comfort and all these things. I remember when things were shutting down, I felt claustrophobic a little bit, like, man, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I can't go to the store. I can't, Walmart's closing at 10 o'clock. Like, I'm just going crazy, and I don't even like going to Walmart, but just knowing that it's closed just is like, I feel confined. So what did you see during COVID from your perspective? How did you talk about substance abuse and trauma and loss?
So much occurred in this past year. Like I said earlier, so many people that maybe hadn't dealt with mental health issues in the past found themselves with anxiety or depression or loneliness. Our single brothers and sisters talk about being locked down. When you're locked down in an apartment by yourself, loneliness can creep in. And substance abuse, anxiety, and marital issues were the top three things that I saw a lot of. Like you said, Walmart closed, things shut down. So people's way of coping, whether it was exercise or work or socializing, their normal way of coping was taken away from them. So a lot of people turned to alcohol and drugs. and substance abuse definitely increased over this past year. And just the trauma of what we saw on TV, right? Body bags and the death tolls every day, and all of that, the trauma of living in this time period caused increased anxiety in a lot of people. That worry, that fear, that those physiological symptoms increased for sure. And then the grief, so many of us lost loved ones, or just the grief of losing jobs, finances. There was so much loss over the past year, that grief has been one of the big things that we're seeing as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for us to recognize where we have experienced loss in COVID. I think the problem with when we don't deal with it, go back, process it, talk about it, grieve well, is the analogy I usually give is a sports analogy. If you dislocate your elbow, if you're a basketball player, if LeBron James were to dislocate his elbow, and then he were to go in the locker room, they give him a pain shot, and he just plays through the pain, just keeps playing through the pain, to the point of medicating the pain. And I don't feel the pain. Eventually, if that elbow doesn't heal well, that elbow is going to become arthritic. It's going to not work well. And over time, it's going to end his career. And I think the same thing happens when we don't deal with loss well. And I think even for me, my grandmother passed away during COVID, and we couldn't do, in my opinion, a proper funeral. We didn't get to celebrate and honor her life like I would have liked to have seen, because we could only have like 10 people in the building, right? And it's like, I think that happened for so many people, that we lost a lot of people. Then we didn't get to grieve properly, because we couldn't go to the funeral because they wouldn't let us, or we had to live stream the funeral. I mean, it was just, but I think it's important to go back and to find those areas of loss and process and all those kinds of things. Jason, let me ask you this. From your profession, firefighter, did you guys see any increase with COVID to mental health stuff, or is that you didn't really experience that?
It's a hard, I just get a small piece of the pie. We have some days where we see a lot of stuff and others, but I will say there's definite change. And like for the actual COVID, like families were getting COVID together, like they were in the house together and they were getting it. And then there's a lot of concern for like the elderly family members. And there was a lot of people not calling until the very end, because they knew if that we took them to the hospital, they wouldn't see them again, because that had been their experiences for the past. So, like we come in and like, it was a real deal. Like it was definitely different than the years past. It wasn't like for nothing, where we would come in and see people that had waited just way too long. And I'm not saying they could have made a difference by going earlier, but I am saying that there was a mental decision to not call because they're scared of going to the hospital and dying, and that's different than in past before. That's where you go to get help. But for some reason, like during COVID, that's where you went to die. And so that had an effect on when people called. It had an effect on, I think, the number of family members that would get sick in the house together. We definitely saw that for sure.
Yeah. All right. So what do we do about this? What are some ways that we can help ourselves and even help people in our circles that maybe we say, wait a minute, they haven't been themselves for a couple months. I probably need to step in. How do we do this? Because the stakes are high. Like, not addressing these issues can be catastrophic. And Jason, you kind of shared a stat with us before. Can you share that with us, just about?
Yeah, sure. So like mental health, like we talked about, some funny circumstances where it's hard to figure out if this is a mental health issue whenever you're saying, no, I'm fine, when other things are going on. But it's so difficult to figure out on your own, and the consequences are real, like you said. So suicides and across the nation from year to year usually happen at twice the rate of homicides. If you think of the homicides that we see on the news that make the news, you know, if you think of like each time you see only a few homicides make the news, but then if you think, you know, you know, double those for suicide, you know, and probably even more than that. That's actually the numbers that are coming on with suicide. And suicide, like, is almost always a cause of mental health, you know, associated with that. So whenever we are missing it in our friends, you know, when we're missing it with our church members, it has severe consequences. I think it's the number one leading, maybe it's the number two leading. It's the top two leading death for teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like this isn't just like a hey, let's talk mental health so it can like be perceived better. Like we need to save lives, you know, by talking about it better. And so yeah, like I'm not sure. Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes it seems so overwhelming to know where to start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's take a shot at it.
Yeah.
So there's four things I want us to just kind of flesh out a little bit. So one, paying attention to our mental health, paying attention to mental health of those around us. Education, healthy versus unhealthy coping, and where do we go to get help when we just don't know what to do. So paying attention to our mental health. One, we're giving you permission to pay attention. Like, yes, just like you pay attention to your physical health. And unfortunately, some of us don't.
Yeah.
But for example, we take care of our physical self, we pay attention, we go to the doctor, we get physicals, checkups, mammograms, whatever gram things we get. We need to also be aware of our mental health. Ekpe, what do you say about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Just paying attention to ourselves, noticing the little things and the changes. And it could be something as simple as why am I always on my phone? Why am I always watching Netflix? Like, what am I trying to distract myself from? Why am I always yelling? Why do I feel angry all the time? Or why do I feel anxious? Or why do I find myself crying? You know, we can give ourselves a lot of excuses. Oh, it's the time, it's COVID, it's the kids, it's, you know, but really taking the time to assess what is going on with me. This is different. Let me talk to somebody about it, or let me do something about it. Just being mindful, you know, taking a few minutes every day just to be mindful of your mental and emotional health and take care of it as we do our physical health.
That was a pretty good inventory, I heard you say, because like when you take my mental, like inventory of my mental health, usually I'm like, yeah, I feel fine. You know, like, or even if like my wife was checking up on me, you know, if she'd be like, are you okay?
Yeah.
You know, like ask that way, be like, yes, I'm fine. You know, but I like those specifics. He said like, you know, why am I spending more time on social media, right? Why am I don't know, what you said, like maybe sleeping in, all those things that I listed before as like living the life that kids see. You know, why am I eating more, sleeping in, not showering? But like those are some specific inventories. Those sound like better questions, right? Than just like how am I feeling?
Right.
You know, it's funny. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I feel like I'm pretty self-aware. And when I get overwhelmed, I just want to sleep. I want to escape from my life.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, if I could just escape the life and the pressure and the responsibilities and just sleep for like 4 or 5 days and make it all go away, then I'll be okay. And so I know, I feel myself when I'm doing it, because then I just want to lay down. I want to go to sleep. Yeah. And what I know I'm doing is like, I'm too overwhelmed.
Right.
I'm past my load has exceeded my limit, and I don't even know where to start. Right. And then that's when I know I have to. There's some things I do to try to get out of that, but I think self-awareness is huge.
Yes.
Huge. Okay, so let's talk about education. So you know, we talked a little bit about some of the symptoms, okay, about what depression may look like, what anxiety may look like, bipolar, schizophrenia, what these things may look like. I think education is very important, so we know what we're looking for. Yeah. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just even you doing this, I think is amazing. when you called, you didn't even get the question out. I was like, yes, I'm doing it because this is educating so many people and like, oh, I didn't know that that was a sign, or oh, I didn't know that was a symptom, or oh, I didn't know that this could happen. Just being educated in the signs and symptoms, whether it's in a formal way or an informal way. And I think just us talking about it and being okay talking about it will help us get better educated about mental health. I'm so glad that it is so much more in the media right now than it has been in the past, because more people are coming forward saying, you know what, I struggle with that as well, or I saw myself in this celebrity or this person. Um, so just people talking about it is a way of educating ourselves.
That's good. That's good. And I think when we observe people who are going through stuff, what do we do, especially as Christians, right? Someone in your church, you've noticed they normally come to church every Sunday, and all of a sudden they start falling off. You see them making cryptic posts on social media. Jason, what do you do if you see that situation?
Yeah, well, let's see. When I'm a paramedic and like someone's saying they're having an anxiety attack and like they can't breathe, then I say, relax, slow your breathing, you'll feel better. But yeah, I think we do that on the Christian aspect of it too. Yeah, when someone's like, yeah, man, like I just, they're feeling anxious or whatever, then hey, brother, trust God, give him all your cares. And then like, like there's this problem solving issue that we get into where like we give these knee jerk reactions that really aren't very helpful, even though they might be true, like I do think it's true, like that you can, put your worries onto God. And I do think that will have effect. But I don't know. I think it's part of the education too, Dr. Wade, maybe that with what we can do. I think a lot of it though is like you talked about, is just kind of like being aware. Which usually probably looks a little more like listening and empathy rather than like problem solving.
Yeah. I like the image of, what occurred in Job. Like just sit and listen. Not offering a lot of advice or talking about what's going on with you or how, giving an example of your life, but just listening. A lot of times people, when they're saying things out loud, they're also processing it. And just having a listening, non-judgmental ear helps. It may not help 100%, but it's the beginning. And, I think we have to extend some grace to us because a lot of us just don't know what to do, right? If somebody comes and says, I'm having suicidal thoughts or things like that, we might get scared and not know what to do and give a pat answer. But it's okay to not know what to do. It's okay to just listen and not feel like you have to give an answer. But then take that person with you. You know what? Let's go talk to the pastor. Let's call this crisis hotline. Hey, I know this counselor or this person that may know what to do. So it is okay if you don't know what to do. Don't feel like you have to jump in there and do something, because you might jump in and do the wrong thing.
So
I think also from a church standpoint, though, John, like the community, I think that's at church, I think is a really powerful tool to be able to just like have accountability with others. Because there's some people like in church and that I know to a level that I feel comfortable like telling them things, more comfortable than I would like friends necessarily. Because like friends are sometimes just feel good friends. Like you go and you have fun with them and you don't want to bring your problems up, but whenever like you have community around you that I know that cares about me, like talking to them about like real issues, knowing that I'm going to see them like on a weekly basis or, multiple times a week, where they'll be able to check in with me. I think that's a powerful tool.
Absolutely. So it's important to be plugged in, and to know people and also to be known. I think that's crucial. Let me say this, or let me move forward. We got 2 more to go and we're almost out of time. So Ekpe, you said something that was helpful maybe about a week ago. And you said that when we're dealing with mental health concerns or issues or whatever, we're going to cope. Now, whether we cope in a healthy way that leads to long-term healing, or whether we cope in an unhealthy way, we are going to cope.
Right.
What are some unhealthy and some healthy ways of coping that you've seen?
Yeah. So healthy ways of coping would be talking openly about it, praying about it, maybe, art. Some people draw or paint or write. Um, Exercise is a good coping mechanism. Whether it's boxing physically or just going out for a walk or a run, being out in nature, things like that help us cope. Unhealthy coping mechanisms actually can be all of those things to an extreme, right? It could, things like work. We could hide ourselves in working 68 to 80 hours a week. A lot of people found that out during the pandemic when work was taken from them and they couldn't cope that way anymore. They were forced to face, some things. Eating can be an unhealthy coping mechanism. A lot of us are emotional eaters, and so we feel happy, we eat. We feel sad, we eat. And we're not always eating the healthiest things. And again, substances, so alcohol or drugs, ways in where we can dissociate and just kind of escape and get away. Those are probably the main unhealthy coping mechanisms that I see.
Yeah.
You're saying we cope. Like it's not a question of, should we cope, or like we are going to cope.
We are going to cope. We are going to cope. Sleep, you talked about it, Jaron. Sleep is a coping mechanism. Some people, kind of to escape the world, they're just going to sleep. So it is good to know and take inventory. Okay, what am I doing to cope? Because you are doing something. Take the time right now. What is it that I'm doing to cope? And is it healthy or is it unhealthy?
Yeah. I want to just throw it out there. I don't want to explore it, but hypersexual behavior.
Yes.
I think that is another huge coping mechanism that I see as a pastor. But we won't go into that. But so there's healthy and unhealthy ways. We want to steer people towards healthy ways. So let's say, last question, or really last comment. Where do we go to get help? Ekpa, you said a second ago, if there's a suicidal situation, there's suicide crisis hotlines, things like this. Of course, there's our friends, there's the pastor, there's leaders in church. I mean, if you're in the Christian community, there's resources right there.
Right.
But can you tell us a little bit about your practice and what you guys can offer people, and even how we can get in touch with you guys if we need to get some help?
Yeah. So the name of the practice is 12:2 Christian Counseling, named after Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, which is really what we strive to do. So there's 5 counselors there, and we're all have expertise in some similar areas, but some different areas. So we treat anywhere from 3-year-olds to, the geriatric population. And we really do want to be a resource for any and everybody out there. So different genders, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic statuses. So we go from anywhere from $25 a session up, because we want everybody to feel included. And we are absolutely open to you calling us. And if we are not the place for you, we will help you find, or give you resources to other places that may be a better fit for you. So we're located in Sugar Land, but we also do virtual visits, and you can reach us at 281-846-4616.
All right, that's 12:2 Counseling. That's going to help me remember the name better now that I know it's Romans 12:2.
Yeah.
So 12:2 Counseling. Dr. Ekpe Wade, great practice. They've helped people that I know in substantial ways. So please check them out. if you are in a situation or you know anybody that's in a situation. And then also there's some free resources out there as well. Not totally free, but programs like Grief Share. I think there's like a divorce recovery program that's out there. Celebrate Recovery is out there. So there's some other groups that you can get plugged in with that can kind of help you walk through those kind of seasons. But thank you tonight. We are out of time, but I just want to thank Jason Wire, Houston's finest paramedic firefighter, for joining the conversation tonight. Dr. Wade, my fellow DTS seminarian, thanks for joining us tonight and lending your expertise to the conversation. We're going to be, making sure that you guys have access to this. We encourage you to share this with people. We want to talk about it. We want to erase the stigma. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to our mental health. So until next time, you guys have a wonderful week and God bless you. And we'll see you. We have some good topics coming up on the intersection that we're cooking up. So Ekpe, I know this is your first time hearing about the intersection. But next time you may want to just tune in. We got some pretty cool stuff.
I will.
Pretty cool
Thanks
stuff.
for having me.
Absolutely. Jason, any closing remarks?
Yep.
Good. All right. All right. Y'all have a good night.
All right.